Hello everyone, welcome back to First Friday 5s here on Go Big Boy or Go Home, where recoil is required. Why? Because we're the house of the rising gun. I'm your host Sean, and I want to take a moment and thank everyone for being patient with me, as I know I'm over a week late with this month's First Friday 5s, and we're going to miss a video this month due to me being sick. I can't say exactly what I have, because for some reason YouTube's algorithm really likes to flag videos that use the proper name. So I'm going to take a page out of the playbook of fellow YouTuber The Critical Drinker and simply say that I came down with the unspecified virus of unknown origin. Whoa, that's pretty cool. I didn't even edit that. I gotta steal his stuff more often. Anyway, this month we're reevaluating a list from 5 years back as a way of celebrating our 7 years on YouTube. Last month we took a look at our top 5 overrated big bore handgun cartridges, and a few cartridges moved around and one fell off the list entirely. This month, we're looking at the top 5 most underrated big bore handgun cartridges and if our opinions have swayed over the last 5 years. As before, these are cartridges that are underrated in the eyes of the general shooting public, often even being unknown to all but a niche group. And to be honest, there was more movement on this list than on last month's. Let's start by running down the previous entrants. Number 5, the 10mm Auto. Number 4, the 480 Ruger. Number 3, the 500 JRH. Number 2, the 41 Magnum, and number 1, the 45 Colt. This one was a tough one for me to get through and reevaluate, but I feel that the outcome was fair. That said, this is again a list that is very much up for debate, so comments disagreeing are encouraged, as I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this. And without further ado, let's talk some big bore cartridges. Number 5, previously the 10mm Auto, now the 45 Colt. This one may get some unsatisfied viewers, but I'm going to explain why my thoughts on both the 10mm Auto, which is now completely gone, and the 45 Colt, which was previously number 1, has now been moved to the back of the list. Starting with why I no longer feel the 10mm is underrated. When I made this list 5 years ago, the only talk around the 10mm was either by haters who claimed it was a longer 40 Smith & Wesson with no benefit and excess recoil, and fanboys who insisted it was as powerful as a 44 Magnum. Neither of these claims are true, and no one seemed to value the 10mm for what it really was. The 10mm was designed by Colonel Jeff Cooper in 1983 and was supposed to be a step up in semi-auto power over the 45 ACP. And it is just that. With SAMI specs of a 175 grain bullet at 1,275 feet per second, this cartridge packs a hell of a punch. But it had a rough start. It was not remotely popular until the Colt Delta Elite was released in 1987 and the adoption of it for the FBI shortly thereafter. But with the FBI not liking its drawbacks of recoil, gun size, and wear and tear on said guns, once the 40 Smith & Wesson came along, it was dropped and was only chambered by Glock around the turn of the millennium. But it slowly started to make a comeback as people appreciated it for what it is, and more manufacturers started selling models chambered in it. But in 2017, when I made the list the first time, it was Glock, 1911s, the 6 Hour P220, and the 10 Folio Witness. But that's changed as the market and the shooting public now values the cartridge for what it is. Now you can buy a Smith & Wesson M&P, a Springfield Armory XDM, and even a new 6 Hour P320 in 10mm. And, fanboys and haters aside, it seems to be getting the credit it deserves as a sort of 357 Magnum power level round in semi-autos that is good for self-defense, hunting, and trail defense when you get the right kind of ammo. It is underrated no more. Now, why did our previous number 1 get the big drop all the way to number 5? Well, in the last 5 years, I've had time to talk to more folks about it and to personally research the cartridge myself with different ammo and firearms. At SAMI specs, this cartridge is a heavy hitter that can shoot a 255 grain bullet at up to 900 feet per second. That's some horsepower for a non-magnum round, and there's a lot you can do with that. And if you have a tough-built revolver or a 454 Casull, you can load some really hot stuff that is equivalent to a 44 Magnum. Hunting power to spare, and if you are willing to spend the money to get a custom-made 5-shot 45 Colt, you can almost touch 454 Casull power. That's pretty damn awesome. But the fact is that most folks aren't willing to specifically seek out a revolver for the plus P loadings when they can buy a 44 Magnum that is more or less equal in power. And author Max Prasic put the two head-to-head in his latest book, Book of Hunting Revolvers, and the 44 Magnum came out on top. No doubt, this is still a wildly underrated cartridge that is far more versatile than it ever gets credit for. And if you're into or want to get into handgun hunting, it's well worth your time to consider. But I think there are 4 cartridges that are far more underrated than the 45 Colt. Number 4, previously the 480 Ruger, now the 500 JRH. The 500 JRH fell 1 spot to number 5 on this list. For those unaware, the 500 JRH is, for all intents and purposes, a cartridge that is a shortened 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum. The brass is dropped from 1.625 inches to 1.40 inches, and the pressure is decreased from 60,000 psi to 45,000 psi. It is also much more powerful than the 500 Special, which has a 1.285-inch long brass case at 36,000 psi. The SAMI specs on the 500 Special max out at a 350 grain bullet going 1,375 feet per second, while a 500 JRH will shoot the same bullet at 1,500 feet per second, no problem. And you can load bullets up to 440 grains flying along at 1,325 feet per second. The 500 JRH often gets overlooked because it is not SAMI certified and it is only chambered in the BFR, meaning that ammo is from reloading or the very expensive price of buffalo bore. Or a buyer could get a gun from Smith & Wesson or Magnum Research in the BFR for 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum, and the ammo comes from many sources while being somewhat cheaper. Plus, people love getting the biggest 50 they can get, and the JRH isn't that. But it's available in a normal-sized revolver, relatively speaking, has a lot less recoil, and has no trouble taking any game as it's using the same bullets as the 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum, just going about 300 feet per second slower. And that velocity loss doesn't make a ton of difference when it's a 400-plus grain slug. Seriously, this cartridge always gets the job done when taking on large, dangerous game, and is a must-consider for people looking into hunting or defending themselves where large animals are present. So why did it fall a step? Well, it's getting more well-known around the hunting community, and when the non-hunters in the shooting public hear about it, they seem to get the value of it really quickly. And they are seeing the advantages the cartridge has to offer over the big Smith & Wesson 50. So it's starting to make some headway. It's still underrated and deserves more credit, but the fact that it seems to be getting more attention is really making me smile. Number 3. Previously the 500 JRH, now the 460 Roland. A new entry. The 460 Roland is a variation on the 45 ACP. It is a 45 Super. It uses significantly strengthened brass that is 1/16 of an inch longer to prevent chambering in standard 45s and maxes its pressure out at 40,000 psi. That's a major jump over the 45 ACP's 21,000, the 45 Gap and 45 ACP Plus P's 23,000, and over the 45 Super's 28,000. And it will give you serious power that gets into 44 Magnum territory. It will push a 230 grain bullet to velocities of 1,350 feet per second. And you can load bullet weights up to 290 grains. Now, in fairness, it isn't as versatile as a 44 Magnum revolver due to the limitations of the case length and the semi-auto platform, but it will compete with the 44 Magnum Desert Eagle when using the proper ammunition for that platform. It literally is a stone's throw away from the 45 Winchester Magnum, and here's the real kicker. It was designed to generate this power by converting a standard 45 ACP handgun. While it is most often chambered in conversions for 1911s and Glock 21s, it can be chambered for the FNH FNX45, the Springfield Armory XD and XDM, and the Glock 30 and 41. The 460roland.com website even says you can email them about other platforms and they may be able to convert those as well. I see this as an underrated cartridge because, despite being around since 1998, it doesn't get talked about enough for handgun hunting. I hear people talk about it for woods defense, but this is a serious powerhouse round in a very conveniently sized package. And unlike the Wildy pistol or the Desert Eagle, it's not gas operated, so hardcast bullets are an option. Hell, if you'd rather buy a factory-made 460 Roland, Wilson Combat has your back, for a price. With all that power and packability with a compensator managing recoil to be no worse than a strong 10mm, this is a cartridge that needs to get way more credit. Number 2. Previously the 41 Magnum, now the 480 Ruger. Jumping up from number 4 to number 2 is Ruger's first ever cartridge named after their company. The 480 Ruger is a shorter version of the 475 Linebaugh, shooting the same .476-inch bullet, but from a 1.285-inch brass case versus a 1.400-inch brass case, and with the pressure reduced from 50,000 psi to 48,000 psi. I have had some conflicting information in regard to its release date, but it was either 2001 or 2003. The 480 Ruger will push a 325 grain bullet to 1,350 feet per second and a 410 grain bullet to 1,200 feet per second, so it is no slouch in power. But being that it was designed to be an in-between the 44 Magnum and 454 Casull cartridge, rather than the new at the time Smith & Wesson cartridges that were created to be power-level dominating behemoths, it was quickly pushed to the background. And by 2010, the cartridge was discontinued by Ruger in their revolvers. Thankfully, the market spoke, and by 2013, it was back. Why? Because people were starting to get it. They realized the immense power this round has, and how good of a round it was for hunting large, dangerous game. I've talked to many hunters who said they wish they would have bought a 480 Ruger instead of a 475 Linebaugh, as it's plenty of power and much less recoil. And that's why it's so underrated and why it's jumped up so far on this list. The 475 Linebaugh is absolutely known for its hunting pedigree, but the 480 Ruger doesn't get brought up as often. And it should. On Max Prasik's Amazon Prime Series Big Iron, a 17-year-old 100-pound girl took a buffalo with a Ruger Super Red Hawk chambered in 480 Ruger. All that power, and she mentioned that the recoil wasn't that bad. And the game was taken very efficiently. Now, admittedly, ammo isn't the easiest to find, but it is out there, and the Ruger revolvers chambered for it are well built and reliable. The 480 Ruger is a serious hunting round and should be front of mind for many hunters out there. But sadly, it's on the list because it often gets overlooked and underrated. Number 1. Drum roll, please. Previously the 45 Colt, now the 41 Magnum. Jumping from the number 2 spot to the number 1 spot is a cartridge that I honestly think has been overlooked since its release. Hitting the market in 1964, the idea was to hit the sweet spot between the 357 Magnum and the 44 Magnum. Everyone had been asking for this, but when it was finally delivered, nobody wanted it. And that's a real shame, because this is a seriously fantastic cartridge. Sammy has the specs showing a 210 grain bullet at up to 1,585 feet per second. And you can buy ammo with 265 grain bullets going 1,350 feet per second. That is some serious power, and the hunting community hasn't ignored the 41 Magnum. I've talked to a lot of hunters that have used this round for a lot of game, though it isn't powerful enough for the largest of game out there. Still, it is a hunting favorite for a reason. It produces roughly 90% of the power of a 44 Magnum while generating felt recoil that is around 70%. That is a fantastic trade-off and a good reason to go with the 41 over the 44. It has a reputation for flat trajectory and excellent accuracy, and it's very, very packable. And if you're not on safari hunting the Big Five, there's no reason not to consider this round. Sadly, its lack of popularity has led to more limited firearms options and hard-to-find ammunition. But it's a great round for reloaders. I would recommend being a reloader if you want to shoot this round, as it really opens doors and lowers costs. But if you are a handgun hunter or want to be one, and need lots of power with recoil that won't beat you up, the 41 Magnum is quite possibly the best option out there. And for that reason, it is easily the most underrated big bore handgun cartridge, period. So let's recap that list before we go. Number 5, the 45 Colt. When loaded to potential, it's a great hunting round that you should not overlook. Number 4, the 500 JRH. There simply isn't a better 50 caliber hunting round out there. Number 3, the 460 Roland, a semi-auto Magnum powerhouse without the usual semi-auto Magnum drawbacks. Number 2, the 480 Ruger, all the power most hunters will ever need with much more manageable recoil. And number 1, the 41 Magnum. Forget the 44 Magnum and check this round out. You won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the reevaluation of this list. Do you agree, or do you think the cartridges here aren't as underrated as some others? Let us know in the comments section below, and please share with us what cartridges you think are underrated. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and if you didn't enjoy it, thanks for making it this far and giving us a chance. And remember, go big bore, or go home. And if you are willing to spend the money to get some awesome custom-made 5-shot 45 Colt type revolver like an idiot that doesn't know what he's saying because he didn't read the script,